it's BlockchainBrad or Brad Laurie, and today I'm honoured to speak once again with this Witek Radomski, and he's here to really articulate what is an all-in-one blockchain game development platform. Witek, thank you very much for being here to do what is an update for all those who are fascinated by the Enjin platform.
It's my pleasure to be on.
Likewise, mate. Now, as I mentioned before in the slogan, you are an all-in-one blockchain gaming platform. I wanted to ask you, though, about some quotes I've read from the team. One of them I saw on Twitter. It says that blockchain is about individual sovereignty and true asset ownership. Can you just comment a bit more on that comment to help us understand exactly what Enjin stands for in that context?
Sure. Yeah, that really is a good description of blockchain. I mean, the blockchains let anyone participate in this large network, and you know, in the financial sense, like with Bitcoin and those kind of tokens, you actually own the currency, the token. So what people don't understand is it isn't just a number on a web server that somebody can shut down. It's a whole group, a whole network of people that are running this blockchain, running this code that everyone agrees on. And, you know, all those people agree that this person owns, you know, say 10 of these tokens or coins, this person owns 100 of them, this person owns 50, and that all the transactions they do are legitimate in the network, in the system. So what we're doing at Enjin is we're moving that outside of just currency, and we're letting people tokenize assets, tokenize virtual items.
Mm-hmm.
So we're creating this whole platform of tools that makes that accessible and usable. So you can tokenize things in video games. That's the primary thing we're working on. You can tokenize a weapon, a gun, a piece of armor. And when you own that, you actually have control over that. That is basically a contract that is written in code that gives you that ownership. So now it's the system that says this person owns this weapon. It isn't, say, Blizzard, who runs World of Warcraft, saying this guy owns the weapon, but we can shut his account down.
Right. And Witek, just to interrupt there for a moment, I mean, that really is the game changer. That's the secret sauce that's afforded by non-fungible tokens, by blockchain. And we're certainly going to go into that, you know, and touch on that as we, you know, really hear the updates from you for Enjin. But obviously, you know, the currency itself, as you mentioned, the currency or money benefits, transforming that. We've seen the first iterations with Bitcoin. Obviously, there's a bit of a collaboration potential between tokenized economies, tokenized money, and then moving on that to the digital asset that you're speaking about now.
Yeah. I mean, like what we did with Enjin actually is we created Enjin Coin, and we basically allow items like those weapons to be created with a certain amount of Enjin Coin inside of them. So, you know, you can use Enjin Coin to purchase things, you can use it as a currency, and you can also forge these virtual items out of it. And that gives it a sort of a liquidity and a kind of initial base value. And people really connect with that.
Right, sure. Now, with regard to some other, you know, more general statements, one of the comments I've read is that blockchain itself is a revolution. And I know you're a really big proponent of that sort of narrative and that idea. Can you just comment a bit on just how big this can be for the future of business?
Yeah, I mean, I've really been trying to crystallize this idea. I still have to work on it more, but what people don't really realize is that blockchain is going to really change the way, like the way people can interact with the digital world. Like blockchain actually lets you have uncensorable content with smart contracts. You can put out a message onto a blockchain like Ethereum, and nobody can remove that. You know, that's a huge, powerful tool. You can have systems like Patreon, but as we've heard in the past, Patreon shut down certain accounts and people lost their livelihood. With blockchain, a blockchain type of Patreon, that can't happen. And with business, I mean, it gives businesses so much power. It gives people who want to start businesses so much power, because now you don't have to, you know, sign up to to some kind of payment processors, go through the whole fiat system. You can basically have a wallet, pull up the address, and receive funds immediately and send funds around the world immediately. And with tokenization, you can do a lot more as well.
And in the context of users, often we hear from all the proponents of crypto and blockchain that users and adoption are fundamental. In your instance, you know, we've seen evidence of tokenized models pre-blockchain be of real value or proven value for gaming communities. Now, what's your stance? What's your position on the potential to really engage the wider space beyond crypto? Surely, Witek, you know, given that we see the value of digital assets now and the value of personal ownership of their own work, that this must be spreading quickly like wildfire across the globe for those who are proponents of transforming the way in which they can essentially reap the benefits of their work through gaming.
Yeah, I mean, it does give gamers that ownership. Like, it gives them ownership, and it also gives them a persistent identity when they own these items. Imagine, you know, as games come out, like right now, there's a lot of games still in the development, especially on our platform. But as these games come out and as the years go by, you know, the items that you've received in these games, you're going to own them. You're going to be able to trade them with people. You're going to have full power to do that. And, you know, many years down the line, you'll still have access to these items. So you don't have to interact with, you know, a proprietary walled garden inside a game to interact with your items. Another cool thing is that people can now build applications and communities around these items and directly interface with them with APIs, with interacting with the blockchain. So you can build whole systems, you know, like marketplaces and, you know, like apps that, for example, show all the details of an item, like for any game, for all games that run on the blockchain, because it's all open and transparent to everybody.
Right. So the potential is quite immense for those who really want to build upon the systems that are now emerging.
Yeah, I mean, you know, gamers, even now when there's very few games available, I mean, we're in the Pong stage of gaming on blockchain right now. People are getting these pre-release items for games. Some of the games are already coming out, but they're trading these items. They're making some income. Maybe they're in some cases they're actually playing the games now, and they're earning some items in the game, and then they can sell items that they don't need or items that are really valuable that they want to monetize. So gamers can actually earn something doing this as well.
Right. So the big question is, how do you really get the attention? How do you garner the attention of those who are not necessarily in the crypto circle? And as you know, that's relatively small right now in 2019. Given that there's so many monetary points, there's so many value propositions to this ecosystem of Enjin, how is the narrative spreading right now? What strategies are you using to get people on board, to get them experimenting, using and playing these games that are literally changing the game when it comes to enabling them to have more ownership?
Well, like I said, we're really early. Right now, most of the games are still in development. But, you know, slowly there's betas coming out, there's alphas coming out. The real experimental and brave game developers are the early guys who are trying this technology, trying to figure out how to make it work in their games. I mean, you know, the simplest way you can use it in your games is simply, you know, tokenizing your valuable items, you know, armor sets and rare weapon skins and things like that. Game developers have actually, you know, raised some funds for their game as they develop it, selling these early items. Mm-hmm. But they're also using these items in interesting, weird, unique ways in storytelling. In maybe like one guy is doing this AI storyteller system that actually looks at your blockchain history and you know, makes the story based on that. What items you've held, what items you have, and different things related to that. So people are going to experiment with what you can do with blockchain. They're also going to experiment with how marketplaces will influence game economies. So now that you have these items that anyone can trade freely, how is this going to impact the economy of a game? that's going to be really interesting for games to figure out, and it'll be a more realistic and interesting experience in my opinion.
Right, and it's a perfect segue into what you're doing as well, Witek, because you've set up with your team the Enjin Marketplace, and it's one of the key points I wanted to talk to you today because it is a major development. One of the things I've read is that there's potentially hundreds of items now being able to be listed, if not thousands, and that number keeps growing. That the standard, the ERC 1155, that's a key development that you guys have built. So can you talk us through a bit more about the way in which this marketplace is developing, how rapidly it's developing, and how much attention it's really starting to get globally?
Yeah, so we launched this marketplace. It is a really cool, very easy to use way to list your assets and sell them. So it integrates with our Blockchain Explorer and the Enjin Wallet perfectly. So you can go in, when you're browsing the Blockchain Explorer, you see an item you like, you can see that it's for sale. You just click buy, and then you can scan a QR code with your wallet and instantly purchase it. So it's just a few steps. And right after launch until now, it's only been about 2 weeks now, we were surprised by how much activity actually happened on the marketplace. People are trading a lot of these items for games that still haven't been released yet, which is crazy. But we've actually gotten really excited about the activity on the marketplace. So we are expanding our plans on the marketplace.
Right.
In the near future, we're going to be adding a lot of interesting updates to the marketplace.
Well, let's dig a bit deeper. I like to. So you're not going to give away too much, I suspect. Witek, you never like to, but what is some of the things we can expect with regard to the developments for the marketplace? Because so many are so bullish on the growth of this system. Obviously, it enables, as I mentioned before, our whole globe and network of people to start to essentially to buy and sell, their own assets in a way that's simply never been done before because of blockchain. So give us some clear indicators of what's coming.
Sure. So, what's already in development and going to be coming soon is obviously, search, filtering, all the features you can expect. Our first release was pretty basic, but very soon you're going to be able to fully sort and search those items with all these controls. And then the next thing that we're going to be developing is auctions. So now you can list your item sort of like on eBay. You can set a price. You can set a buy it now price. And you'll have all these auction features to be able to sell your item for whatever people want to bid for it. So that's a couple of things that I can talk about. I can also say that we're going to do an API, so a very powerful marketplace API. You can use that inside your games directly as a game developer and actually have that marketplace and monetize these trades and these sales that people are doing.
Right, so you're building on some of the systems that have worked. So if we allude to things like Google and eBay, clearly they've been Fortune 500 companies. They've been massively popular in the centralized sort of frame of business. You're opening up and flipping that on its head. Are you going to make sure that the interfaces or the front end of these assets or these systems you're building, are they going to be easy to use? Are they going to be something that is relatively seamless?
Well, yeah, of course. That's our whole thing, right? That we're trying to make all this stuff super easy to use. So our goal is that anyone who just plays games, doesn't know much about blockchain, will be able to interact with blockchain items in the near future and not be confused, not have to struggle with it. That's our real goal. So we want to make it easy for game developers and users, the end users. That's what game developers have been concerned about the most. How are we going to make these games, and is it going to hinder our growth? Because the game developers that we talk to, they're concerned about making awesome games, right? We're mainly talking to people who are building really cool games, games first, and they want to add blockchain as an additional interesting depth kind of feature, either for their economy or for their item mechanics or for metadata or whatever. So yeah, they really want their players to understand how to use this stuff easily. So with that API, you could actually build it straight into the game interface.
Right, and I think you raise a very important point here, is that you aren't just simply trying to uphold a marketplace for those who want to create, independent digital assets, but you really want to make sure that the integrity of gaming is upheld as we move into a blockchain sort of era of gaming, that the quality of gaming is second to none. So can you comment a bit more on the status of the developers that you do work with at Enjin? Are they world class? Are they the best in the business to make sure that the game itself is paramount to everything else?
We work with a completely varied range of game developers. So we have people who are working on just crypto games, the games that we're kind of familiar with. But a lot of the guys that we're working with, a lot of the studios are building some kind of interesting game mechanic. Usually they're like a game that we're used to, like the games you see on Steam or on PlayStation, where they're 3D or 2D and they have lots of animation and cool stuff happening. So a lot of these guys are building really good games first. And obviously now that quite a bit of time has passed, we're seeing a lot of these games going into beta and alpha stages. So a lot of these games you can actually start playing now.
Right.
That Dissolution is one of these really cool looking sci-fi kind of space shooter games, and they're continually releasing new updates. They're going to have they started out with like a first-person shooter, and now they're going to have spaceships and all sorts of amazing things like that.
Right. So are you, given the empirical evidence you've seen and you have inside understanding of the industry itself, and you're starting to see through the developer's lens just how much of a transition is happening, are you confident, Witek, that developers will genuinely make this switch, into the blockchain frame, into tokenized models that literally, reinforce this change that we all want to see?
Well, I'd love to say yes, absolutely, but a lot of the guys that we've worked with so far, over 30 game developers, there are the early adopter, like experimental guys who want to try this new technology and build something new, try a new kind of game with it. But we have, we've been to the Game Developers Conference twice now, and we've talked to larger game developers, guys who have really, really, really polished games with quite a bit of money behind them. Mm-hmm. And so the challenge with these guys is the usability aspect. So they're most concerned about, will we lose players because they don't know how to use blockchain type of thing, right?
Right.
So our focus now is, removing these barriers, removing the complexity of using a wallet. We're really working on these problems right now.
Right, and we've certainly will dive deep into some of those complexities as we talk through this. Now, with regard to the steps that you've made, that 1, 2, 3 process of basically seamlessly using the marketplace, can you just quickly touch on that for us? For those who have never used the marketplace and want to better understand those easy steps, what do you need to do when you engage in that environment?
Well, to purchase an item, that's really a simple interaction. Right now, you have to install the Enjin Wallet on your mobile device, and you go to the EnjinX Blockchain Explorer, and you look through all the assets that are there. You can go through all the different games, look at the items, and then you can basically see that an item is for sale and click the buy button on the item. Now that shows you a little dialog. It shows you a QR code you can scan. Mm-hmm. Just scan that with the wallet and you can instantly purchase it right there.
Okay, so relatively easy. Have you made sure that that information is accessible to people so that they can go through that easy step-by-step process?
It's basically there. Like as soon as you see the buy button, you click Marketplace, you see the assets that are for sale. It's basically self-explanatory, right? Mm-hmm. You go to eBay, you kind of understand how to use eBay, right? You know how to use those kind of shop systems. This is sort of similar. There's some instructions, when you scan the QR code, it'll tell you to download the wallet.
Well, that's one of the advantages of having, preceding sort of systems, like eBay, is that you have some sort of idea of, how you can build the interface and, and allow people to interact in something new. It's going to be exciting to see how this does emerge in the future, given the potential of this and the scope. I wanted to talk to you a bit more about the quarterly recap that you put out recently, that summary. 2-year anniversary is coming up very soon. The 1st of November is a big deal for you. I suspect that you're going to be making some announcements around that time because it is such a milestone for you. Do you want to talk to us a bit more about anything at all you're prepared to tell us with regard to that milestone, what it means for Enjin, and what's coming, around that time?
Yeah, it's amazing that it's been 2 years, and so I'll give you a bit of a glimpse of what we've been doing. We have brought on a new COO, Caleb Applegate, and we've been working with him over the last few weeks to really transform the company. Like we've been a very inventive company over the last 2 years. We've created all these new products. We've thrown out all these new ideas. But now we've really decided to focus in and focus our efforts on refining our products and making them perfect. So like our main goal in the next few months is really going to be to add new features and refinements and just really polish up everything that we've put out. That's in code quality of the SDKs and the API quality of the platform. That's better features that people really want in the wallet and in our blockchain explorer. All the things that we've released, we're just going to boost them and make them really what they were meant to be. And then we're going to be basically releasing some interesting new features. So
give us a hint. You talk about new features.
So like there's so many things that we work on. So there's like, for example, for the Enjin Beam, right now you have to have the Enjin Wallet to use the Beam system. But we're improving the Enjin Beam system so that even when you don't have a wallet, you'll be able to claim those items. So now when games release these Beam promotions, they're going to be able to release them to a large audience that doesn't even have the Enjin Wallet, and then eventually onboard them onto the ecosystem.
That's a big deal for adoption for those who can interact, that may not have that wallet yet. That's quite substantial. Obviously, exactly. SDKs are coming too. There's a lot of development you're making in that collaboration with Beam. So do you want to talk a bit more on that? Because that's something that is, something a lot of people want to know more about. And then we can talk about some other things that you're planning on releasing in the next.
So about SDKs?
Right.
So we are actually, we've released, kind of silently released our Java SDK on GitHub. I don't know if many people noticed, but that's one of the SDKs that we said we're going to release. That also paved the way for Minecraft, which is already ready to go. And we are also working on the Godot game engine, which is the largest open source game engine. And that is just about ready to release as well. We're refining it, adding some unit tests, and just making sure everything is ready to go. Adding some examples. We're also adding some really interesting examples to the Unity SDK. So we realized that we thought people knew, we thought game developers knew about how to design secure games, but we realized that our examples were a little too simple. So we're making some real big changes to all our documentation and code tutorials and examples for Unity, so people build secure games out of the box with these examples. And so that's like on the SDK front, that's the main things we're doing. We're also working on an item management system. So now you can actually use our entire SDK for all your game items, and you can interact with them even if they're non-blockchain items or blockchain items. I think it just makes it that much more useful for game developers trying to dip their toes into this space. Right.
So there's a lot happening, obviously. You mentioned Unity. You talked about a new item managing system. There's a lot. So let's keep going. I mean, this is really what the people want to hear. So I'll shut up and let you keep going.
The next big thing is going to be the web panel. So before, you've had to interact with the Enjin system using APIs and some of the tools that we've put out. But now you're going to be able to go onto our webpage, go onto the Enjin Cloud platform, and you're going to be able to do everything from creating new items, defining their metadata, uploading the images, minting copies of the items, setting all those parameters that we have in Enjin, creating Beam QR codes, creating all these promotions. Just everything you can do in Enjin, you'll be able to do using this flexible web panel system. So now people don't need to kind of jump into the code right away. They can just flesh out their item tokenomics of their systems that they're building, whether it's a game or an application. They can build that all in the web UI, and that's going to be super powerful for people.
Okay, so when is that likely to unfold? Because obviously that's a major development. Are you likely to release that this year sometime?
We are hoping so. So first, we're aiming to release the mainnet launch. So we've had some people using the Covan testnet. And now in November, we're planning to release the final mainnet version. And probably either along with that or shortly after that, we'd like to release the whole web panel system. Okay, so we can look forward to seeing more of the updates as you start to move towards that. I know Maxim's been hinting at those sort of things in the Telegram, so we'll be certainly vigilantly watching to see things happen. Now, with regard to the devs, I wanted to talk specifically about what's happening with Enjin devs. Give us a bit more of an update specifically on what is being built. Who are the core builders, so that we have that assurance from you that you've never stopped, and in fact potentially kept going and built an even stronger dev community. So you mean not the Enjin team? You mean the game developers?
Right. I sort of wanted to go with both in both directions to find out, the internal team, how the developers in Enjin are going, and then also expand that outside that to understand the connections you have with game developers very specifically, and whether that's growing.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, we've always had a very strong development team. We've been improving our development processes. We've brought on 2 guys recently, a really world-class back-end developer and a really good front-end developer. So they're helping us, build out our front-end panels and some of the other systems, because there's a lot going on in the background. So yeah, the development team, everything is good on our end. And on the Enjin game developers, I mean, we haven't onboarded a ton of new games recently, and that isn't really my department, but we've basically just been supporting the existing game developers that are on the system, and we basically shut down our early adopters program a while back. What we're basically aiming for is we're going to release all the documentation, all the mainnet, the web panel, and the updates to all these SDKs. And that will make it really easy for just the general public to start using it. The game developers can just jump in and start building on that. So in November, we're hoping that's going to be the way things go.
Well, November is going to be a very big month for you, Witek. Clearly, there's a lot planned, and there's still a lot you're not telling me, I can sense. Now, with regard to the roadmap, I really want to talk to you about, I want to talk to you about some of the things that people really have asked me through the Telegram and through different sources, who are all pro-Enjin. Efinity, for example, you already touched on Unity. I wanted to talk to you a bit more about that to better understand what your plans are with regard to scalability. If you wanted to touch a bit more on that topic as well in the context of Efinity as well. A lot of questions have been raised, hoping that you would address some of them.
Sure. I mean, we were a while back, we were hoping to release Efinity earlier, but it's a complicated project. We've been working on it, and we've had people working on it, but there's a lot of research and development that happens as part of Efinity, and it's changed from the last over the last year. Initially, we were planning on doing a side chain. We are currently not doing a side chain with Efinity. We're building something completely new, and this needs a lot more time to build up properly. We're building some kind of complicated systems involving, I won't say exactly what technologies we're using, but side chains were not powerful enough to do what we want to do with games. So we had to start developing something a bit different.
Well, can we just extrapolate on that just a touch?
Sure.
Some of the suggestions in Telegram, one great question came forth about asking about the consensus algorithm, whether or not you've explored new concepts of consensus or whether you'll be utilizing, pre-existing ones to develop and enhance Efinity, since you are really playing around with the potential of this, staking as well, TPS. If you could just touch on anything at all that you know with regard to how you're moving Efinity forward.
Yeah, so we've found a structure, and we've been working with our team, also an academic team, for quite a while now. And we found a structure that lets us work with, basically you can synchronize a blockchain and a non-blockchain. The issues that we're dealing with right now, the technical problems we're trying to solve is how to synchronize a blockchain which is very ordered and very precise in terms of the blocks and the data that's going into those blocks, and then a completely non-serialized system that, like, if you want infinite scalability, you need infinite parallel, basically parallel transactions. You can't have blocks. So we're working on merging this parallel system with the blockchain. And so representing an item that a person has on the blockchain and different copies of those items outside of the blockchain.
Right. So to do that, that's going to require quite an expert team and quite a lot of resources. So is there a timeline? Is there a plan for Efinity, given that you're adding these new layers of complexity into a more robust technology in the end? What's the roadmap for Efinity?
So we've solved all we've solved all these problems, or most of these problems, on paper, except we're still working on these synchronization problems. But right now, we've focused our core dev team on these improvements to the wallet, the EnjinX Marketplace, releasing the mainnet, releasing all the SDKs, all this stuff. So the majority of the team has been focused on that, and we're going to be focused on that for maybe another 2 or 3 months until 2020.
Got it.
After that stuff has all been released, then we're going to be focusing on Efinity. A lot of people are going to be focusing on Efinity after that point.
And I really appreciate the transparency on that answer as well, Witek. Thanks for that. Now,
it's not easy to say. Yeah,
and I know a lot of people have been asking about it, and it's just clear that you've had to reposition that in the roadmap for now, given all of the SDKs and the things you just mentioned. Now, in that context, the mainnet, I did really want to touch on this. A lot of people are asking, why it hasn't happened yet. Obviously, it's a big deal. To transition and utilize Ethereum in that way. When is that likely to happen, do you know, in the plan this year?
You mean the roadmap?
Well, obviously the roadmap, just a general term for different things happening. But a lot of people are asking about mainnet specifically in the context of a roadmap, in terms of a timeline. Can you give us
mainnet we're aiming for November. So mainnet is November, then we're going to release the web panel. We're also, working on all sorts of updates to the wallet, which, we're going to be releasing. So our next 3 months, definitely, we're going to be releasing a lot of these things that I've been talking about. And then after that point, maybe it'll stretch into 4 or 5 months where we release some more features. We have some really cool ideas, that we want to build. Like, for example, we want to build a full statistics system. This is something that we've talked about in the past, where you can find out deep statistics about any asset, any item, any token that you hold in your account. So we want to build that into the wallet, into EnjinX. We want to give people a way to categorize their assets. And another cool thing is we want to build a peer-to-peer, the world's first peer-to-peer on-chain trading system. So you can walk up to your friend, you both have wallets, and you can perform a secure trade with no escrows directly.
Wow.
So we're working on a lot of that stuff. But yeah, mainnet, that's coming just around the corner.
Well, let's talk about that in terms of the value it brings. Obviously, a lot of people have been asking about that mainnet. What does it mean for Enjin to have make that transition to utilize a mainnet in this way?
Well, I mean, all the users are now going to be able to easily create new assets on Ethereum mainnet. So it's really opening up the floodgates. People can start, using this the way it was meant to be used on mainnet Ethereum. Right now, it's been sort of closed off, restricted. Mainly, early game developers have been able to access the system. But with the mainnet launch, you're going to get that extra. You're going to have more documentation. You're going to have better user interfaces that we've built, and you'll be able to do all this stuff, run your games on Ethereum's mainnet. So
right, and just simply the reach alone. I mean, what could this do essentially for Enjin, not just as a business, but more as with the tokenized model that you've created? Surely that's going to have a profound effect. Just making that switch.
I mean, we expect that we'll launch mainnet, and this will be a time when people can start exploring and building things on the Enjin platform. So, it's going to be a road ahead. We're going to have to market and talk to more game developers and build documentation, expand our forums, expand our whole reach to make it easy for developers to use this system. And developers will then build the products that bring in the people, bring in the users. So, we'll build the platform. Developers will build their own products, and then all the users will start using the system.
Right. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is scalability. I think we touched on it previously. But, given that you're pro-Ethereum, no doubt, it's a very serious ecosystem it's building, but it has inherent problems of its own to address. How are you going to make sure that as your eco builds, that you can ensure that users can have that seamless experience and that scalability doesn't become a serious issue when we don't see serious bottlenecks as a result?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen things like the gas price spike every once in a while to quite a few cents per transaction. So like our short-term plans right now is, like I mentioned before, we're going to have this SDK that lets game developers interact with both blockchain items and non-blockchain items. So obviously you don't want to be putting your common, ammo packs on the blockchain, most likely. So after that point, so I think that, Ethereum 2.0 is, eventually on the horizon, right? They're working on scalability in certain ways, but I still think games, I don't know if all game data everything that happens in all games belongs on a blockchain. I don't think you need a record of every single thing that happened in an FPS deathmatch.
I think Vitalik would agree, because he's definitely wanting to make sure that you don't see a full Ethereum scenario.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just going to grow in data infinitely, and a lot of that stuff doesn't need to stay in permanent records. So that's sort of why we've had to change our tactics a little bit with Efinity, and we've found a system that can work for this, that can avoid the infinite expansion of data, but still provide really parallelized, really fast transactions at the volumes that are needed in any real game that anyone can envision.
Well, we're certainly going to be looking forward to seeing that, in a much more empirical sense as it starts to unfold. But just for the short term, if we can just talk a bit more about the potential of the Ethereum working with you to make sure, once again, that as you're literally still building these games, that there is that scalability acknowledged and built in, so that we can maintain that seamless interaction and that gaming experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll really have to rest on people building the products, building their games correctly. I mean, you want to do things like give people an asset that you don't want to have, millions of transactions happening that are useless. If you're doing things on mainnet, you want to have that ownership transference where it's necessary happen there. But if you're doing intermediate steps and you don't have a scaling platform, you're not going to want to transfer assets back and forth endlessly in let's say a game session on Ethereum mainnet. So it'll just have to be people being educated on how to build games properly right now.
Right.
And eventually, as things move forward with blockchain technology, as the systems get better, then you can start doing more frequent transactions as these things become available.
Right. Now, with regard to this building businesses, we talk about the value, the beauty of decentralized mechanisms, but can you just clarify for us, as those who want to learn more about the future plans, are you actually a business, by core design, Witek? And if you are, can you talk a little bit more about the distinction between a centralized business but decentralized technologies?
Yeah, so I mean, we are like Enjin is actually pretty decentralized. We've been this way for 10 years now. Everybody exists in different countries, and we work together very closely.
Mm-hmm.
But we are working on revenue. We already have revenue on the crypto side. It's still not break even, but we're working on that right now, especially with our new COO. We've been working on business metrics. We're working on improving those metrics every day. Mm-hmm. And we will have better ways to monetize as mainnet rolls out.
I see. And how transparent will you be with that information now that you have Caleb on board as the COO? Will you be releasing that data so that people can better understand as you move towards proof of revenue in the future?
Well, I mean, I don't think we'll be posting our balance sheets and things like that into the public. We are a private company. Mm-hmm. But people will be able to see how we're monetizing. I mean, one of the first ways that we're monetizing is the marketplace, and we have our existing CMS platform, and as we now build different ways for game developers to use our platform, there's going to be ways to monetize that. Another way we've had these two different buckets in Enjin. We've had the sort of game developers platform that we've been building and the crypto platform, and we also have an enterprise section. So we've actually been working with a number of large enterprises, and those are ways we're able to monetize our technology as well.
Right, and they sound like they're big, and I heard you just say you can't really say, but can I just push a little bit? Give us whatever you possibly can to help us understand, the scope of these kind of enterprises. Because in the past when we've spoken, we discussed Samsung, as you know. So, are we talking about that kind of magnitude?
Most likely that kind of magnitude, in that sort of ballpark. But the cool thing is that it's actually proving that what we've built is useful to big players. These companies actually need to tokenize different things, and they need a platform a turnkey, easy platform to tokenize that. So they're using our technology directly. It's really exciting to see that we can just immediately, without much modification at all, have this serve enterprise. So we have a separate section from gaming now that is actually quite good for monetizing.
Right. So you're the turnkey solution for a lot of these pre-existing enterprises and big entities, in their respective fields. Have you gone and pitched this to many of them already? And talk us through that, because obviously that would be so interesting to many to understand what it's been like for you to witness the feedback, the responses, for those who perhaps didn't know about blockchain but had the clout, had the capital, and had the position of being a big enterprise.
Actually, it's funny because these companies have actually done their research. They've done really good research, and they've come to us, which sort of just a lot of these things just fell into our laps, and they come to us. They have a problem, and they say, we think that your solution is going to work, and we're like, yeah, it's perfectly going to work. So we haven't even been really pitching to these companies. They have been coming to us. It's been working really well, and hopefully we'll be able to talk about them sometime in the future.
Yes, I can't wait. And what's interesting also is that if they're going to you, that would clearly consolidate, the argument that there is a real use case in blockchain. If we're seeing a lot of these current businesses seek out, and startups like yourselves at Enjin. Now, I want to, without disclosing the names, obviously we can't, but with regard to the scope, you certainly know the reach of these enterprises. What could it mean for Enjin in these partnerships in the future without the FOMO and the hype? to better understand what that collaboration would mean?
Well, it will really solidify Enjin as this go-to place to tokenize, the go-to system to tokenize anything. I've actually been very surprised by some of these enterprises. They have very interesting, very unique blockchain use cases. It's not the same old stuff you've heard of before. It's actually really exciting and really rich stuff they're doing with blockchain, and it's really tokenizing things that need to be tokenized. So it's I think as these things get released in the future, it's going to solidify us as that solution, and it's going to show the power of ERC-1155 and the usability things that we've been working on to make blockchain easy to use. All these things that we've invested in are really going to be paying off.
So in that sense, I mean, it sounds really substantial, and I'm frustrated I don't know those names, but in time that will come. But do you feel that, given what you do know, that you'll become that number one gaming platform, the blockchain-based gaming platform for both today and tomorrow?
Well, I mean, we're in a good position. I mean, there's a few different blockchain gaming systems out there. Yeah, they all focus on slightly different aspects of what they think is important. But if you really look at the whole ecosystem, I don't think there's a single company or platform that has done what Enjin has done. If you want to simply tokenize your items, if you want to have an end-to-end solution, we're getting very close. We're unique in that aspect. So if you want to be able to do that, we've made those investments by really working hard on ERC-1155, making our wallet super seamless, making the Beam platform pretty cool, and it's going to get better very soon. So yeah, I mean, we're a very unique, we're in a very unique spot, and we've been focusing on that tokenization aspect, that item ownership, and making it richer and better. So things like metadata and all this stuff are going to get better and better with our platform, and people are going to look at the landscape and say, okay, well, I guess Enjin's the best option out there, right?
Right, and one of the things that we've always talked about each time we caught up was that you all focus on building, you all focus on the tech first, and that's why, for the most part, we don't see you really hyping your startup. Now, one of the things that was fascinating was this protocol compatibility that I've seen emerge with other startups like 0x, for example. And there's this multi sort of aspect to the token standardization and tokenization. Do you want to talk a bit more about the collaborations that are either happening now or in the future with regard to that potential cross-protocol involvement?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different protocols, and we have to determine which ones are fads and which ones are going to stay. On ERC-1155, for example, Open Zeppelin has been working to include that as one of the token standards on Open Zeppelin. So that's going to be good for developers. They're going to have a really OEM version of ERC-1155 out there. We also want to make our sort of wallet signaling system more standardized. And obviously on the other fronts, there's we want to support existing standards. I mean, I know that, for example, let's just say BitPay, right? It has its own payments protocol system. And, that popped up a while ago, and we have to support that in the wallet. So, we have to start integrating with more of these open platforms protocols to make sure that everybody interconnects and works.
Right. So there's a lot that's still, happening with regard to that compatibility. Is there any others that perhaps, that you are aware of in the team that's coming in the future with regard to development, further development, integration with other protocols?
I mean, we've with ERC-1155, we have a few standards that we've used in ERC-1155. I can't really talk about any other protocols.
I understand.
Integrating with. Is there any specific ones? I mean,
no, not really. I just wanted to better understand, the things that we don't know. Really just.
Yeah, there's been Wallet Connect, for example, which I was a part of early on. That might be something we want to integrate with our wallet. But there's also the Blockchain Gaming Alliance is working on a Bean, what's it called? A Bean metadata standard or something like that. Basically it defines how metadata is stored, so it'll be future proof. So it's not just on a web server. It'll be on IPFS or a method of putting things on IPFS or future blockchains that support metadata. So there's some things like that the Gaming Alliance is working on. Okay,
so there's it's good to hear that IPFS is also part of the narrative as well, to make sure that decentralization is still that core tenet. Now, one of the tough topics is the token. I know you don't like talking about it too much, but with regard to things like having 10 million Enjin locked up, that was an interesting development that had been something that many of the team were proud of, known as a minting milestone, I think it was deemed. What does it mean, though, to have that kind of support, through the Enjin token being locked up? Having, we can liken that in many instances to things like DAI, for example. For people to do it, they really believe in the ecosystem. Are you confident now that you have the backing of the community?
Yes, but I think we're still so early. I mean, we're hoping to see hundreds and then thousands of games using our platform, and thousands of other apps that are not games. So, we're still really early. I mean, I'm expecting to see many tens and eventually hundreds of millions of Enj locked up in the future at some point.
Right. Now, that's fascinating, considering the tokenomics that you have all spent a lot of time on. We know the value of network effects, having seen pre-existing blockchains emerge, and just the success that some of them have had. So do you feel that you've got the model right with regard to prospective development, prospective network effects, coupled with the right kind of structure built in for a sound tokenomic model?
I think so. The tokenomic model, it supports the ecosystem. It supports the people who also were early and supported the creation of this idea. And it works. It's logical. It doesn't block anyone out of the system in the far future. Everyone will still be able to mint items and create items. Everyone will have that power of melting their items. So it's a logical system. It's future proof. And now we just need to get the adoption happening. So as time goes on, our focus will also be on bringing in more people, more developers of all kinds to use our system.
Absolutely, and November's around the corner, and once again, there's going to be a lot unfold, I think, in that month. Now, with regard to, you mentioned some of these SDKs, one of the things I did want to better understand is the relationship between Minecraft and Enjin, specifically Enjin, because you have a very special relationship with them. What's happening there? And I believe that your COO, Caleb, is also doing some things specifically with this.
Yes, so Caleb actually runs Mineplex, which is, if not, I think it might be the biggest Minecraft server in the world.
Right.
So, he brings his experience from running Mineplex for many years to Enjin. But we have basically been working on this Minecraft plugin for a long time, and it's completely done. It's ready to release. So we are going to be releasing that to the public, and we hope that Minecraft servers will find this an interesting piece of software to work with and integrate items in their games. I mean, Minecraft, a lot of servers run on these virtual items and virtual payments for their games. So this is going to be an interesting tool for Minecraft servers to use. We're also going to release EnjinCraft source code as well. EnjinCraft is like the demo server that we created for showcasing what you can do in Minecraft with our plugin. So it has a bunch of features built into it that we were using. So we're going to release that to people to use to figure out how to add that to their own plugins.
Right, and that's a big deal given the size of Minecraft in terms of users, in terms of its global reach as well. Once again, what could this mean, with regard to this collaboration? EnjinCraft was just the start. What could it mean for showcasing what these new digital assets can do in new contexts, particularly given this is one of the world's largest and most popular games?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really speculate as to how it will unfold, but we do have a very large and like a very interesting, I would say, Minecraft community. We have tens of thousands of Minecraft servers that are using our existing legacy CMS platform for their servers. And they've been using that to make their revenue and run their servers and run their donations platforms and stuff. So we are going to try to present this to those users, ask them to try it out. And, that's been the plan for 2 years ago. And we're going to be rolling that out as we roll the Minecraft plugin out as well.
Right. Well, it's going to be exciting, to watch this, because we've always talked about Minecraft and it just keeps getting stronger and stronger, this connection. And clearly with mainnet around the corner and all of these other plans, including the SDKs, it's just a matter of time to see all of this interconnect and consolidate. Now, one of the interesting questions that's come from the community is about Maxim, actually, and his briefcase. I really wanted to ask you about this. I was fascinated by the very concept of it. Can you tell us more about what this briefcase is and why everyone's talking about it?
Well, Maxim released some teasers about briefcases, and I mean, honestly, the only real things I could say is, you can think about what briefcases usually hold. Maxim has said that one day they will be opened. So that's really all.
It's like saying there'll be vaults that one day will open as well. I mean, give us some sort of hint of what is he talking about? Because clearly there's secrets inside these briefcases. There's serious information.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really say that we are under certain, we can't say until certain things are released. But the briefcases represent, I mean, you can think about what briefcases usually hold in the world. So, it might give you a hint.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll leave it at that with that one, but I'll definitely come back to you next interview, and well, hopefully it's released by then anyway. But let's talk a little bit more about the scope of Enjin-backed assets, because one of the key points you've made in recent information releases was that it's not just about gaming. And so I really wanted to touch on that and better understand just how far this can go. Rewardio, for example, was a way in which you were exploring incentivization. So can you touch on that a little bit more as well to help us understand what the potential is of Enjin?
Sure. I mean, one of the clear, one of the use cases we could look at is Enjin Beam. We released this experiment where you could simply scan a QR code and receive a blockchain asset, right? That is a really powerful use case for business to now promote items, promote their products that use tokens, for games to promote their games. We've actually been seeing and working with businesses that are using Enjin Beam in really interesting ways. I mean, you can use these in physical sort of venues to basically give people something of value, and then understand what's happening with that, with those items, and also incentivize those people to come back and use those tokens to unlock other things in the future, or go to your website or go to your game. So that's a really cool use case for blockchain gaming. Like I said, we've also been working with some businesses who have been kind of, they found really cool use cases for tokenized items, tokenization. So, what else can I say?
You can't tell me too much. That's what I'm getting, but you are exploring the possibilities. That's what I'm hearing.
Definitely. I mean, it's a super powerful platform. I mean, our APIs are not specifically gaming focused in the end. They're general APIs for interacting with blockchain assets. ERC 1155 is a super powerful standard for any kind of tokenization of anything. I mean, you could use it in the supply chain. You could use it for rewards. You can use it for any kind of structure. It's really powerful for that. So our platform is usable by any kind of developer.
So we can expect to see more verticals present themselves, at the very least, with experimentation in the future. And clearly that's what's happening in the background now. Now, with regard to blockchain games and tokenization, you've made it very clear you're very bullish on this, this emergent sort of industry. No question, obviously, of its integrity, of its its potential. But I wanted to talk more about evidence and empirical proof with regard to specific games. If you could talk a bit more on Ultiverse, for example, Multiverse, these discussions about gaming innovation and what you're doing to really lead the way in that sort of evidence sort of scenario.
Yeah, so I mean, Ultiverse is creating a number of games, a whole series of games that you can actually move your items in between. So they're creating their sort of internal multiverse. I can't even remember how many games they have. It's 10 or 15. Mm-hmm. So that's a really cool concept that you can jump in between these completely different worlds. They have a real fantastical universe. There's sci-fi worlds and tropical dinosaur worlds and all this stuff. But we've also worked on this concept of the multiverse, and we believe that even outside of this sort of collection of games, items can go into completely different games with different engines, different graphics, different storylines, and still be usable in some interesting way. So it's either game developers collaborating together and supporting different items from different universes. In the future, we may even see players using tokens amongst each other to help themselves out in games. It's
almost abstract, considering what we've seen in the past. You're really playing around with potential of the future. What's the feedback been from the community in these concepts, or from developers, for example? Are they all suggesting, given what they've seen, that this is all very much doable, this can be done, and that essentially this interoperability between games, is really the conversation that people are now having at Enjin?
Yes, we've actually had developers ask us, like, okay, we've had this concept of the multiverse, and we released a few initial multiverse items that were sort of made by Enjin, and we gave them out to all these developers, these early guys that were making games, and they were very inspired by that. So we have some games, some items are shared amongst over 10 different games. But we've also done things like work with charity. We're now thinking about working with 2 different charities, where they create their own tokens. And the first charity that we worked with was SENS Research Foundation. And they created some life extension sort of related tokens, mitochondrions and things like that. And people actually bought those up. The funds went to the SENS Research Foundation to actually cure these age-related diseases. And the game developers are now asking us to help them integrate these items into their games. So there's going to be games where you can actually use your charity token that you donated to and get an extra life or get max health or something like that.
So you're adding a bit of benevolence into the blockchain, a bit of altruism, which is a cool thing, because if there are ways to do good in blockchain, that can only be a good outcome. Now, one of the things that's interesting as you've built these innovations and you've been experimenting, the Spark program has come up as a topic of discussion. Something indie developers, for example, is a core focus as well, because you want to really allow for more upstarts and bolster that from the ground up. So what's happening in that sense? Can you comment a bit more on the Spark program?
Yeah, so we initially, in the early days, we had this thing called the Early Adopters Program. And that's where we got a big chunk of our first games that onboarded on the Enjin platform and started developing and building their system out to be a blockchain game using Enjin. After that, we realized it was very intense on our team. We are primarily a team that builds software. And we had to spend a lot of time vetting games, making sure they're good quality, and helping them with all the setup. So we shut down the early adopters program, and we started a simpler program called Enjin Spark. So we've had a few games join that program, but now we've decided to close the Spark program because we are launching into mainnet. So from this point onward, very shortly, there's not going to be any program like that. We're going to be there to help all developers. There's going to be our Enjin resources, our community developer forums that some of our developers come on and help developers out. there, but everybody's going to be able to access the program.
I see. So all your resources are going to go to the mainnet focus. What does that mean, though, for the potential of new startups, new developers? No doubt you're still going to be focused on trying to facilitate the onboarding of more devs.
Of course. I mean, if developers want to talk to us and, figure this out, because this is a pretty new space, we're always open for those conversations.
Right. Okay. Now, one thing that is very interesting, given that Asia is such is a buzz when it comes to gaming. Japan is arguably sort of in that core region, and you have a special relationship with them with regard to an accelerator program. So, can you talk us through how valuable that's been? Talk us through what it is, and whether or not that's going to expand into other areas of Asia.
Yeah. So we're working with Hashport. They are a Japanese company. Now, this is not my field, so I'm not the biz dev side, and I'm not really part of this, so I can only speak about so much. But we are working on Japan. We are expanding in Japan. We have actually dedicated staff that are working on Japan right now in terms of expansion, business development, and making those inroads into the Japanese space. From the beginning, Japan and Korea are very important to us. So yeah, you'll see more from those countries for sure.
So can we expect to see a bit more coming from Korea because I had written down Korea, Japan, and China actually. Wanted to find out more about whether you're focusing on those three. So clearly, as you mentioned, Korea's in the near future. Are you also looking at China, given that they are such major consumers of gaming?
And China is an incredible country. So we've focused our efforts on Korea and now Japan, but China is something that we definitely want to break into. I'm very fascinated with China. So yeah, this is something we will work on after Japan. Okay, got it. Now, partnerships, I know, once again, NDAs, it's tough to talk about with you, but what can you tell us when we say the word partnership? What, aside from those serious enterprises we can now hear from you are coming, what other kinds of partnerships that are valuable to Enjin are coming this year? Yes, we are actually on the verge of announcing a very, very special partnership to us with somebody who has been extremely influential in the crypto space. We're really honored to be working with them. So that news is coming soon. Again, I can't say who it is. Is it a person? Right now. No, it's an organization, a very influential in the crypto space, one that I've respected for a long time. We are very, very honored to be working with them. That's going to be, so obviously we all know this entity. Yes, definitely.
Okay, so when can we expect that to happen?
Definitely this year we're going to be announcing it.
Okay, so many things that are going to happen. I'm looking forward to hearing of them as they unfurl in the next few months, or in the next 2 months, I would imagine, for much of it. Now, wallets, I just want to quickly touch on that. Moving across from already the significant updates you've made on the Enjin Wallet, touching on the idea of virtual wallets as well. Can you just comment on the upgrades you're making to, again, just to give us a peace of mind that you're constantly working on these core features?
Yeah, I guess I jumped into that a little too earlier on, but yeah, we are going to be adding ways, for example, to categorize assets. So now, games will have their own weapons and armor and all this stuff categorized. People have asked us for ways to, show their favorite things up top. So we're thinking about how to do that. Like I said, the statistics that you're going to be able to find out about the things that you hold in your wallet, that's something that's in the works right now. And that peer-to-peer trading, it's going to be a world first in the blockchain wallet. We've developed a really cool on-chain system that anyone can trade. You can walk up to anybody on the street or anybody online, somebody you don't know and don't trust, and completely simple user interface. You're going to be able to trade with them in real time. It's going to be.
This is going to be absolutely huge. I mean, imagine a scenario where you have a convention, and all of these participants are just walking around with their phones and just literally exchanging digital assets because they can in that peer-to-peer mode. I mean, we know the narratives of Bitcoin. We know exactly why that white paper was written. and you're really emulating that at the digital asset sort of level. You must be so excited that this is a world first.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun to use too, which I think a lot of our stuff is fun to use. You know, I really love using Beam. Even myself, I get excited if I like scan a Beam code. Oh, what am I going to get? So I mean, we're trying to make this stuff fun, and I think this trading feature is going to be fun too.
Oh, I would agree. I mean, there's a lot happening, and you also develop in terms of all the things you've updated your website as well. What's the feedback been on that? You know, those things that are obviously fundamental, but also need updating, and you know, always hinge on the response from the community.
Yeah, I mean, this is really a reflection of what we've been doing recently in our company. We have really gotten focused. Our marketing team has just really leveled up. They're working on some amazing things. This is, you know, they've been responsible for the new website, and they're going to be responsible for another whole series of changes that we're doing on the front end. And you know, our whole team is really working together to make this a really presentable, basically front end for the developers and the users that are coming onto the platform.
Right. Well, we're certainly looking forward to seeing more of those updates, but congratulations for always making sure that you have updated that front end. That is important. Now, one of the other things you've done is the custody focus as well. You've made sure that you have those custody partners. Can you talk us through the value of that? Gemini, for example, has been involved. Why you've chosen certain parties, as well as you've made sure that's addressed as you build.
I'm probably not the best person to talk to about that topic. I really have been focused on development, the development side. So that side is completely out of my scope.
Okay, we'll find someone who can answer that later. Now, you know, to play the devil's advocate as well, Witek, I wanted to ask you about some of the challenges, you know, to get real and not just ask about the developments. What are some of the concerns, you know, perhaps that are valid from the community that you've seen raised? For example, I've written a few concerns about speed, concerns about low adoption rates right now. And one in particular is the concerns about the TX fees, whether or not they're going to change as you move to mainnet and beyond.
Yeah, I mean, these are all valid concerns, and this is stuff we are completely aware of, and we're working to get better at. So the adoption rate is really, I think, you know, we haven't released mainnet at this point. Once mainnet comes out, our marketing team is really going to be able to go crazy and start making putting out marketing. Our biz dev team is going to be able to talk to people and let them use the mainnet platform. It's really just been almost in a beta state right now. So, and then in terms of, you know, transaction speed and all that, we're completely aware of this. We're building, you know, intermediate systems to make this easier for developers to work with. And then eventually the end goal will be that scaling platform.
Right, and you mentioned also you'll be upscaling, or you'll be pushing more the marketing narrative later. Once, you know, you hit mainnet, no doubt we'll see the likes of Box Mining and Ivan on Tech. They've always been proponents, very vocal ones, very big supporters of Enjin, particularly Box Mining with his love for gaming. We're likely to see more influencers also come forth and collaborate with you to send a message to the people about the value that Enjin brings.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually hoping that we can get some more perspectives from some of the rest of the team, because I've done quite a few interviews myself, but there's so many fascinating people on the team that I'm sure they can really talk about some really cool stuff.
Well, yeah, I would agree. I mean, it's always nice to have, you know, insight into the different parties in the team. We don't often get those privileges, so it'd be great actually for many of the people on our side to have that privilege and learn more. And as you said before, there's some answers you just simply don't know, or you know, it's not your expertise. Now, just finally, I wanted to thank you on behalf of all the Enjin community, and just ask you one final question. That is with regard to regulation. Obviously, there's a lot of conjecture right now about the value of deregulation, or the value of having a very autonomous state, you know, and really enable things to flourish in a very organic way. But we also see the challenges inherent right now in the way things are playing out for speculation, for example. What are your thoughts on this, and what do you envisage for Enjin as we move forward?
I mean, you know, from the beginning, we have always been focused on this use case of tokenization, the utility of the Enjin token as a way to enhance these assets. I really like the fact that, maybe I wouldn't say it's deregulated, but it's an open, permissionless almost system. It's fully code is law. Obviously there's going to be some bad actors in the space. There's going to be people who try to scam people out of money. We've been trying our best to just be a really good development team. We set up the tokens and the contracts in a way that is fair to everybody involved. And, we're just continuing to create cool stuff. So that's really all I have to say about that.
Right.
I think, yeah, it's we're in blockchain because we want to give people that power, to have power over their assets. And, sometimes, they'll do what they want with those assets, whether it's, making money off them, hopefully not scamming people out of their cash or whatever.
And I think a lot of people appreciate that. Sincerely, Witek, you've always been tech-centric. You've also always been very much gaming-centric, obviously. And, at the end of the day, there's always going to be an element of speculation in any industry whenever there's money involved. And obviously, tokenization also implies some sort of value. But on behalf of all of those who wanted to know more in an update, I sincerely want to thank you for the time you've taken. It's been a very long interview. It was entirely free for those who are wondering. And once again, this is all about trying to support real use cases, real scenarios where we can see a complete rethink, a complete blockchain revolution that is meaningful and essentially enables a whole new dialogue when it comes to ownership, when it comes to enabling people to benefit from blockchain. And that's exactly what your team are literally trying to do. So I fully support that. And I wish you all the very best, as always, as you continue to build. And thank you so much for letting us know that this year, there's a lot of things happening, not just one. We're talking about mainnet coming. We're talking about major enterprises that Witek has not yet said and very carefully has made sure with NDAs that, he's made it clear that that's coming. But there's a lot more to come as well. So once again, we really thank you for your time.
Thanks a lot, Brad. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, mate.